Hey, fourth graders, remember we talked about main idea a long time ago. So, the main idea is what the text is mostly about. And so, when we are reading a story, we are looking at the clues. What is this text mostly about? We look at the titles and headings, we look at the pictures. Sometimes the main idea is the first or last sentence. Look for clue words that are used repeatedly, which means over and over. It's the big idea. So we're going to read a story today, and when you are done, you are going to write down what is the main idea, and you're going to go back into the story and find some evidence. Okay? All right, here we go. Okay. This story is about Ruby Bridges, and it's called Ruby Bridges, a Brave Child. The text is really small for me, so I'm going to do my best, and maybe you can read with me and you'll hear if I make any mistakes. Okay, here we go. Ruby Bridges, a brave child. Ruby Bridges was born on September 8th, 1954, in Tylertown, Mississippi. She had 3 younger brothers and sisters. Her grandparents and parents were sharecroppers. Sharecroppers were people who farmed land that belonged to someone else. When Ruby was very young, she moved with her parents from the tiny town to New Orleans, Louisiana. Her parents wanted better opportunities for their family. The schools in New Orleans were segregated when Ruby started kindergarten. African Americans were not allowed to attend the same school as whites. Ruby could not attend the all-white school that was a few blocks from her house. She had to travel several miles away to attend an African American school. However, the following year, Ruby passed an assessment that allowed her to attend the all-white school. It was a very hard test, and it showed that Ruby was very smart. Ruby's father did not want her to attend the all-white school. He worried for his family's safety. Her mother's opinion differed from her father's opinion. She knew that if Ruby attended the all-white school, then she would receive a better education. On November 14th, 1960, federal marshals escorted Ruby and her mother to her new school. Many people were not happy that Ruby was allowed to attend the all-white school. A large crowd gathered outside the school to protest her attending. They even threw objects at Ruby and her mother. Almost all of the parents had kept their children home from school that day. Classes could not be held. Ruby sat in the principal's office the entire school day. On Ruby's second day at her new school, only one teacher offered to teach her, Mrs. Barbara Henry, because the other parents pulled their children from Ruby's class. She was Mrs. Henry's only student. Ruby was escorted every day by the federal marshals to keep her safe. She even had to be escorted to use the restroom. Even though Ruby was allowed to attend the school, she was not allowed to eat lunch or play with the other students. Ruby and her family remained strong, and she showed great strength and courage. When Ruby returned to the school for her second year, things were different. Ruby no longer needed an escort. The majority of the students who were in Ruby's class attended school that year, but Ruby still faced discrimination from her classmates. Ruby went on to graduate from high school and a business school. She worked for American Express as a travel agent for many years. In 1999, she founded the Ruby Bridges Foundation. This foundation promotes tolerance, respect, and appreciation of all differences. Ruby Bridges still seeks to end racism and prejudice. Ruby, the first African American child to attend an all-white school in the South, paved the way for other African Americans to attend all-white schools in the South and receive a better education. Okay, you might have to listen to that story again. So what I want you to do is I want you to think, what is this story mainly about? Right? Think about who the story is mainly about. And then I want you to go in and I want you to write some things that you learned about Ruby Bridges. Okay? Now, the space right here is really small to write on. So you could either write on this space, you could copy and paste this into Notability, or if you want to, you can also write on a piece of notebook paper and do it that way. It's entirely up to you how you want to do this assignment. But remember, I need a sentence about the main idea of this story is, and then give me some information about Ruby Bridges. All right, and I hope you enjoyed this story.